and share a screen, and we'll jump straight into it. Quite a lot to do tonight. We're going to start with, once I shut up, we're going to start with Amanda kindly agreed to take us through the first tool. Why are you not loading? There it is. Can you see it? Does anyone can't see it?
Yeah. Yep, we've just got the front screen, not the tool.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome everybody. We've got people that are going to be watching this avidly. We've got Paul who'll drop in soon, I think. I'm going to try to get a different screen so I can see yous. Guys, where are you? Nope. Manage participants, nope. You're all here. Oh, it's a different view, right?
Yeah, I find the little thumbnails float around the screen.
Yeah, they do. Not manage participants, not a new share, not pause, not annotate, not remote control. Oh well, just have to take it on trust that you're paying attention. All I can see at the moment is Amanda. Welcome to webinar 4. This is webinar 5. This is the final set of tools. Finishing up with the one-page plan. We won't meet as a webinar again for almost a month after this session. The idea is that we, as you can see, we're in webinar number 5, down at the end of the so-called workshop phase of the process. And after this, there's what the curriculum calls the application phase. And the idea is that you take the results of all of this and all of the above and start to actually aggregate it and look at it from the helicopter view and try it out, where try it out really means what you want it to mean. Often people take the opportunity to, there it is, I found the right button, I can see you all. Takes the opportunity to do some research, some market research, shop the idea around, do the sort of stuff that Mel's just reported she's doing, talking to the people that you need to do, and Steph for that matter, getting the background detail together, and then starting to put together a pitch, which is 5 minutes on the 5th of December. And our 6th and final webinar will be about preparation for that. I'm confident that everybody will present very well, and I'm confident because everybody last time through presented very well. It'll happen in the conference room, the main meeting room, the boardroom at Virginia. So that's where we're at. This is the notional, sorry, my phone was buzzing, deadline schedule, which again was just an advisory thing, but I'd very strongly recommend that you start uploading. I think Chris is the only one. I checked this morning. I haven't done any marking, given you any feedback yet. Chris is the only one that's submitted the now and where tools by now. And I'd really recommend that you do these step by step and set yourself some deadlines. Otherwise, you'll find yourself engulfed with a whole bunch of stuff at the last minute, and it's really not the best way to get the most out of this course. Just wanted to check before I throw to Amanda for the risk analysis tool. How are you going with, is there anything that needs discussion about cash flow? I'm nervous about this because that's my weakest area. Is there anything anybody wants to ask or comment on with that? I think we've lost Emma, at least as far as, Emma, are you still there?
I can see Emma.
Can you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There she is.
Yeah, there she is. I'm not seeing everybody.
That's okay, you don't need to see me.
I'm interested in the green drink you're drinking, Emma.
Must be a health drink. It's one of those. I bet.
Yeah, it looks incredibly healthy.
Yep. So if nobody has anything to comment about or ask about with cash flow, that's fine. That's absolutely fine with me. This next tool that I'm throwing to Amanda in a sec is not required as an upload, but I strongly recommend that you have a look at it. Simply because whenever you get a product or a service to what's called MVP stage, minimum viable product stage, the person that you're flogging the grant to, whether that's a grant, flogging the project to, whether it's a grant maker or an investor, is going to ask you about risk. Is going to ask you, have you considered what could go wrong and what are you going to do if that thing goes wrong? This is what the tool looks like. It's in the Dropbox folder that hopefully everybody still has access to. If you don't, let me know and I'll resend you the link. I'll also send you, after this webinar, I'll send everybody a link to a folder where I've uploaded, it's got to be 30 different examples of how other people before you, how other edgies have actually completed these. So it gives you some idea of what people have submitted in the past and what's been successful in the past. People have fed back that they find that very useful just to have some examples in front of them of what other people have done. This looks slightly fussier than it needs to. The example that Amanda's going to be working on is this format, not the fancy new reformatted one, but it works the same. All that I'll say before we begin is essentially risk is probability times magnitude, which means how likely is the bad thing is it that the bad thing will happen? And if it does happen, what's the magnitude, what's the impact of that bad thing on your project? So you look at those two variables, how probable the bad thing is, and if it does, what's the impact? Okay, Amanda, over to you. Do you want to talk to this slide or the example?
I'm happy to talk to the, maybe the example actually, Michael, that might make it easier.
Okay, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. So often people get a little bit overwhelmed when it comes to risk analysis. It's one of those areas that people kind of, I mean, anything that's kind of got red flags and risk attached to it can be a bit overwhelming, but it's really, really beneficial, a bit like the cash flow thing. If you know where your weak points are and you identify where there could be some issues or where there could be some things that could undo the good work of your business, you can be prepared and you can actually kind of stay on the peripheral radar of areas that you just need to keep a bit of an eye on. Also, if you're ever going for grants or submissions, tenders, anything like that, which, you know, some of you may within Comlink, you might be tasked to actually go for some additional money for your ideas. You will need to include a risk analysis. Most grants, most tenders do require you to have some form of risk analysis. Often they'll give you a template for it, but and often they look really overwhelming and complicated. But if you have a tool like this, it can help you get your ideas and then you can transfer it into the tender template. So like Michael was saying, the idea of a risk analysis is to kind of take that umbrella, broad, kind of look at your business or your idea and kind of identify areas where break points, weakest links, those kinds of things. And then you actually think about how likely is that to happen? And then if that happens, what's going to happen to my business? So that's that probability times magnitude. And again,
can I just interrupt? The example we're looking at is a real world example from a few years ago when we pitched, exactly as Amanda was just saying, for a job. It was a tender pitch, delivering, guess what, this program to startup businesses in Moreton region. Thanks, Amanda.
No worries. And you will find every tender, Emma, you might be able to back me up here, but most tenders, you need a risk analysis. It's just one of the documents, budget and risk analysis are the things they want you to include. So when you're thinking about these things, risk analysis or whatever, the first thing to do is really make a big list and think about those risks. So sometimes it's helpful on a piece of paper to kind of do the catastrophizing and make a massive list and then actually stop and think about it and break it down. Like, so Michael's given us 4 spaces, kind of break it down into the key ones that are going to actually be breakpoints in your business. Okay, yes, we could all have, I mean, particularly up Sunshine Coast, a lot of businesses may not have put it Perigian that bushfire would be a risk, but it's suddenly become on the radar or something like that. So yes, we're always at risk of flood, lightning strikes, you know, health risks, all of those things. But if you're quite specific to your actual business, you can actually get this quite targeted, because there are general things that we're all going to have as risks. So down the first column, you'll see there, it's identifying your risks, and really think about those as the kind of major breakpoints. If this happened, yep, I would have to really deal with it. Second column asks you, what are the key causes or sources of those risks? So you can see that originally Michael's put something like in there, insufficient response to marketing or funnel workshops. And the cause of that was ineffective marketing activities or outcomes, failing to identify key networks. Okay, so it's a really, you can see anything with a risk analysis. And in this particular model, on the left-hand side, we're going to be talking all about the risk. And on the right-hand side, we're going to be talking all about how to prevent it and mitigate it. But with risk, you're always talking about risk and cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. So the more you have a knowledge about this, the more you can kind of sidestep it and manage it. The third column is effects and impacts. So a lot of risks that we have, you can just overcome quite easily. But what we're looking for is ones that will actually be the, like I keep saying, the breaking points. So for Michael's first one there, he's identified that the cohort is incomplete and there's contractual issues. If he said he was going to get 15 people and he only got 9, he's in trouble. He's got to try and scramble around and find 4 more people, or he's got to 5, 6 more people, there's my maths, or he's got to renegotiate his contract, which means less money. So when you're in there, really kind of break it down into those kind of small things. Risk, what caused it, what could happen. Then we actually take a real look at how impactful is this really going to be. So we've got a broad brushstroke. We're not going to have a complete cohort. We're going to have contractual issues. So what we've got here is your risk assessment. So we actually stop and we think about it. We judge the risk of not having a complete cohort. And we think, what is the likelihood of this happening? Okay. Michael's actually identified, so you've got low, medium, and high. So the likelihood in Michael's business, knowing how he does business, for him to have insufficient numbers in his course is pretty low. In fact, he knows from past experience, he's usually got waiting lists. So he's identified that as a low risk. I haven't seen this done before in many tools, and I really like the breakdown in the middle section. I think this is really powerful, and I haven't seen this done before in a risk analysis. But this tool actually asks us to think about the impact in 2 kind of values. And I think this is really, really beneficial. The first one is financial impact, and the second one is reputation. So this harks back to that love marks and what we're trying to do with our branding and what's the value for our customers. So to break that up, yes, there's often financial cost, but also there is a cost to your actual reputation, which then, of course, down the track may flow into financial breaking. So for Michael in the first one, he said financially it would be very high. If he didn't get the numbers, there's going to be a financial impact. And also there's a reputation that's very high. If he breaks contract with the people who've contracted him, then already Edgeware is not considered as trustworthy as it may have been before. And then overall, so you're comparing the likelihood with the financial impact and the reputation. When you think about those 3, what's the level of kind of impact for this one? It's medium. So the kind of financial stakes and the repetition stakes actually raise up that likelihood. So it becomes that it's a medium kind of impact. If we look at the next one, attributes during early stages, attrition during early stages, which means people kind of drop out of the course. They start it and they don't finish it. The cause of this is that maybe the course is irrelevant, it's not engaging, the content and delivery doesn't work for people. The effect of that is that it's tire kicking. There's a direct attrition, is not actually getting the traction that you need, and that it's only academically applicable. So the likelihood of that is low. Financially, it's a medium risk. It's not going to break your business, but it is a medium risk. And reputation, it's medium. You don't want those people going off and saying this course was irrelevant. So overall, the level of risk is actually low. So you can see that. I won't go through all of it, but you can see there, just looking at the left-hand side of that screen, by glancing there, we can see, we're thinking about those 10-pin bowling, you know, coming back to that 80-20 rule, we can see the risks that are there that we need to focus on and mitigate just by looking at the color coding there. So if we look at that, the top one, which has a medium impact, medium overall level, and it's got 2 red sections, we need to really watch that we make sure that we have enough participants in our courses. Straight up, that's the biggest risk. The next thing that you have to look at then is you go, okay, well, we now know what the risks are. What are we going to do about them? So if we look at the risk treatment or the mitigation, this is the bit that we love, because at Edgeware, we love action precedes clarity. Again, we like to focus on actions. So in the first one there, you can see that Michael's saying high energy, high commitment to project startup phase. Good social media strategy, intensive liaisoning with the right networks and things like that. Now, these are probably actions that Michael has already, all throughout the other tools, identified. It's just that he's going, I really need to maybe put an asterisk against those, because these things could actually be a real risk for my business. Next thing is, can I do this? So it's a bit of that almost like a SWOT analysis thing. What is the feasibility within my current place in my business that I can actually do this action? And so, yes, of course I can. I can focus on team leadership. I can build my networks, and I can make sure that I have on my team someone who's really good at social media and networking. And then finally, you assign responsibility to someone. So, or like the whole team. And doing that in your risk analysis makes someone's accountable for those actions, and you can check off whether they're being done. You can check in with that person. So if we look at the second one, making sure people stay in the course, they don't just start it and, you know, tire kick and drop out. We can focus that we human resource strengths, like that we focus on the human resources in those early stages, make sure people aren't overwhelmed, check in with people. We can modify our tools if it looks like people are struggling, and we can make sure that it's relevant to our customers. So again, like everything we teach here, it links back in. So again, we make sure that it has value to our customers, and our customers can see that value straight up in their first classes at doing this course. Do we have feasibility? Yes, of course we can do this. We've got a proven track record. We just need to focus on making sure that we do what we do well. And finally, who's responsible for that? The team leader, or I would even argue the actual facilitator. So, you know, whoever's actually taking those courses needs to check in with customers straight up, needs to make sure that people are actually being heard, checking that people are actually not being left behind and going quiet, all of those things. Michael, I think that's it.
Well done. I really like the way, and it's a teaching skill, that you recapitulate, is the fancy term, that you refer to what goes before, because these things are built to sit with each other. None of these tools stands alone. They're all about thinking holistically. Welcome, Paul. Thanks for the note saying you'd be late. That's great. You're just at the tail end of the very first tool. I mentioned that this is not part of the assessment. You don't need to upload the tool. It's available to you in the Dropbox. In my experience, the risk analysis is a really useful thing to do, whether or not you actually use it as part of the assessment, because somebody's going to invest or in your project, or grant you money for the project, or award a tender, is going to appreciate the fact, like they're taking a risk on you. They appreciate the fact that you understand the whole risk environment. In the case of most people here, the responsible person is going to be you. You're not part of a team in your project unless you've gathered other people from Comlink or elsewhere into it. But essentially, risk is the likelihood of the bad thing happening times the impact of that thing on your business, the negative impact. And as Amanda said, I never thought about it as the right side or left side of the column, but that's an elegant way to put it, Amanda. What are you going to do about it? So you're saying to the person investing in you, whether it's resources or money or time, that not only have you spotted the risk, but you have a plan. So the risk is not going to catch you by surprise. It's not going to catch you flat-footed. You've got a way to either avoid the proverbial hitting the fan or recover if it does hit the fan. Those are the two kind of actions. Note that this whole thing is at a glance. It's only the most likely risk. Like, it's possible that, you know, there'll be an earthquake and we'd all fall into a hole in the ground, but it's highly unlikely. It's not worth even considering. So you need to actually run through, as Amanda said, what is possible, what negative thing is possible to make it happen.
I think to add to that too, Michael, the good thing about a risk analysis, and when I was starting to go for grants and things, I was quite resistant to risk analysis. But I think what's quite powerful about risk analysis is it kind of gives you, sometimes when you've got a business idea, you get very excited and you get lost in all the small ideas and the business cards and capability statements and all of that stuff. The risk analysis is a nice little tool to keep you quite real as well. It's a nice little check-in tool to go, these are the key things I need to really focus on. It. Like I said, it's a nice little snapshot that goes with all the other tools that says, these are the 4 things that are going to be my make or break points, and I need to keep them in mind. So particularly when I'm getting very excited and, you know, going off on tangents.
Yeah.
Emma.
The other thing, if I could just say something, the other thing is actually in your pitch, you might need to address the risk. So for someone like Paul, it might be, you've never had a relationship and we've never had a relationship with the local Aboriginal community. So you might want to address that before you get asked that. And say, I know this is seen as a bit of a risk, but I've done A, B, and C to address that and put that into action.
Yeah, thank you. It gives you credibility. It gives you a nice solid foundation for arguing your case. Note in the column just right of risk assessment, the risk treatment mitigation column is the word action, as Amanda has said. This session, and very much in the how element of the now, where, how process, is about action. It's about TATs, tiny, achievable, tickable targets. What can we actually do, and when are we going to do it? That's really the value of this whole course. It's about a to-do list that's based on some sort of thinking. And there it is. I personally like the colors too. So at one glance, I can look at where the red ones are, especially. Where's the high risk areas that I need to pay attention to? So onwards and upwards. This is now a process of gathering all of the actions that have happened to date. I mentioned early on that a lot of the tools, and I'll demonstrate that in a second, have an action orientation. Just as this one did, there is some column or there's some hint that gives us an idea of what we can do. This is where we start to bring all of those actions together. I don't know if you remember or not, but when we did the active SWOT in the last webinar, I used that cross the, you know, how can we use our strengths to deal with our weaknesses? How can we use our strengths to optimize our opportunities? I generated in that tool and demonstrated the 8 risks. And that's all I'm going to use for demonstration purposes. I think you'll see as we proceed over the next few steps that you will end up, it's typical for people to end up with a lot more than 8. I don't think it should be more than 32. Otherwise, we start to lose the forest for the trees. So in the process that I'm about to describe, choose the things that really stand out as the key actions, and just list them. And I'll show you in a sec how I recommend you do that. Get it down to a maximum of 32, because at another step further along, I'm going to ask you to split that in two and end up with a max of 16. So where I've written another action, another action, another action, it comes out of the process we're talking about. So it's time now to review all of the tools from the beginning, from the very beginning. So for example, we talked about customer success right at the beginning. What is success for my customer? And in the column that I've so expertly and beautifully highlighted, there's an action component. What else can I do to support my customer's success? And there's a list of actions. And at this point, I'm really recommending TATs, tiny, achievable, tickable targets. I like numbers, I like quantities, I like deliverables, I like dates, I like deadlines. Again, that adds credibility to your pitch. And makes it more likely for you that you're able to actually follow through and actually make your project happen. And that's what you're aiming to achieve with this. This is not just an academic exercise. This is real world application of the tool. Tool number 4, changes affecting my business. Again, you might remember, given all of the things that I've identified that could go wrong, that I need to pay attention to, what am I going to do? And so you'll see in that right-hand column, the word action. These are things that I can do. So I'd go back to this list and gradually just start to fill it in. Just transcribe them straight over, or maybe do a first draft, because sometimes the same action with slightly different words will appear in more than one tool. So you're able to sort of collapse those together into a simple action. Or sometimes you've identified two small actions, like, for example, open an Instagram commercial account, learn how to use Instagram commercially. And another action that you've identified might be, buy some extra bandwidth for my phone or something. Those two things kind of belong together, and you might collapse those into one action, which is develop my Instagram skills using X amount of data per month, which will cost me this dollar. We did a competitor analysis. So who's my competitor? What's their strength and weakness relative to mine? What's my strength and weakness relative to them? And then finally, in the right-hand column, what is the action? What am I going to do about that? Again, I would go back to this tool and simply just write those actions into a list and eventually refine that into the master list. When we went to the where section, that we work on what's working tool, which does a number of different jobs, and you'll see it crop up in a number of different ways. But in this particular context, we're interested in the TATS box, the tiny, achievable, tickable task. What can I actually do given my valuing of my own success and my own strengths and weaknesses? When we worked on marketing, down the bottom of tool number 16, you'll see the words marketing actions. What is it that I can do to market effectively? What are my key words? What's my strategy? And then on the next page, what are the actions that I can actually do? So again, I'd look at those columns and just transcribe across into my master action list. When we got to the SWOT analysis, as I just explained, this is how I came across the 8 actions that I'll use in the example. I generated 8 actions by comparing strengths, weaknesses, my internal environment, to opportunities and threats, my external environment. And in the one that Amanda just worked through with us, the magic word action appears again. What can I actually do? So it's about revising the tools, and it's not just about compiling the list, it's about getting your head into a space where now you're able to take a helicopter view of your whole project and you're able to defend it. So if somebody asks you a question, like the question Emma just asked, where do Where do you get off as a white fella approaching black fellas in the region? What are you going to do about that? You've got an answer at hand. And I go, geez, you know, that's amazing. He's thought about that. Good on him. I'm going to touch on the gas groups right at the end of tonight, but just in passing while we're talking about actions. Again, when you look at this checklist, as I've said, there's nothing compulsory about any of these discussion topics. It's just what experience has told us people find useful to discuss. So you have the option of saying this was discussed or relevant, yes or no. If it was, then what actions are you going to do to deal with that topic? And again, the link that I'll send you has examples of, it won't look quite as pretty as the redesigned templates, but you'll see some examples of how people have actually dealt with that before you. So you end up with up to 32. Like if you've only got 22, that's fine. But you end up with this sort of master action list, which is the first phase then of what we call the impactees assessment of risks. So the next stage is not only listing the things you've got to do, but giving them some kind of priority. So, you know, again, you can defend yourself against a question like, well, you're doing all of this stuff, where are you going to start? You'll be able to come back with an answer. I'm going to start with action number 21 because. Any questions so far?
Michael, do we have to submit the gas group tool?
Yes, that's part of your fourth upload, which is your one-page plan and the gas group checklist. But there's no failure in this course, so long as you show me that you demonstrate that you've actually considered these things as relevant or irrelevant. There's no need to write anything more in those. I'm not looking in any of this. I'm not looking for a Russian novel. I'm just looking for evidence that you've thought about this sort of stuff. Thank you for the question. Anything else?
Can I also just add in too, Michael, that this is the really lovely, exciting part. You know, when we've got a broad idea and it feels a bit high in the sky, when you get to this tool, you can go, I can do that. I can work through this list. And I don't know, I'm a bit action orientated, but I always find this part of the process quite exciting. And I think, yeah, let yourself enjoy this process.
Thank you. This is where the rubber hits the road. This is where you translate something that's just been vapor and an idea into something that's actually workable and doable. And because it's an intrapreneurship program, we have the opportunity of actually following through with these things and actually putting them on the ground. And it's really one of the selling points of this whole process, that it's very practical. The education is based in real world situations. Amanda, just flag that you're going to drop out at any stage and etc. That's one of your fur babies.
I was just going to say, I'm doing okay. I'm just happy to stay for now. I am being mauled by a puppy, but yeah, it's all good.
Mauled by a puppy, slobbered on by a puppy. Okay, so let's say, you know, I've got 32. I've done the revision as I've just described. I've gone back through the tools. I've sifted them for actions, for things that I can do, and I've just listed them. No particular order, just listed them as they come. Maybe I've already done a bit of editing, but I've put my head into a space where I'm now about action. The next step is to refine those and edit them so that you end up with a maximum of 16. So if you've got 32 actions, you're going to have to end up with 16. Sometimes you can combine actions. Sometimes you've just got to make a call and say that's not important. You can always come back to these. These tools work backwards and forwards. It's not unusual for people to get right into the course as far as this and go back and say, look, it's not about bakery, it's about donuts, you know? I've got to actually go back. So Steph just reported that she has to revisit some of the tools. My experience is that once you know how they work, it'll take you 5 minutes to go back and revisit the tool. It's not designed to be intimidating or taxing too much. So I've just taken those 8 examples. That's all I'm going to be working on by way of showing you how the tool works, but I might have up to 16. If you've got 13, if you've got 11, doesn't matter, but 16 is the ceiling for this, for it to be practical in my experience. Remember the 80-20 rule? We're not looking for the whole 100% of what you can do. We're looking for the 20% that you can do that's going to get you 80% of the result that you want, because it's really important to take those first steps and to get some feedback from the real world, from your customers, from your peers, about what's working and what's not. And that's really about the next stage, how you take this stuff forward. Like I say, it's usually about some market research. It's usually trying out your ideas on people, selling them some donuts, giving them some donuts, asking them to try them out. People run these things called focus groups, which are sort of discussions or explorations with a selected group of potential customers to get feedback. Because as they say, your customer knows more about your business than you do. So you'll notice that each of these actions has a date attached to it. So there's a set of deadlines, and that's going to be important if you choose to use what is called a Gantt chart, which I'll show you about in a second. It's a project planning chart. It's not part of the course, but I just want to point you to it because it can be useful. Now we're going to ask 2 questions about each one of these actions. One question is about the impact it will have on your business. So if I do this thing, what will be its benefit to my business idea? That's what impact means, benefit, positive impact. How will it help my whole business idea to happen? And the second question I'm going to ask is, how easy is it? You might remember that I'm recommending that you be smart and lazy. So you won't be lazy. You're turning up to this after hours course. You're putting it, you're not lazy, but imagine that you were. So if I was a lazy person, what would be the quickest, easiest, fastest, cheapest way to do such and such? So I'm going to ask the first question first of each of these. Now, remember in this tool, and I'll repeat this a few times, particularly when it comes to ease, because the ease one is kind of counterintuitive. It doesn't feel natural to do what I'm about to suggest. But I'll get to that when I get to it. Big numbers are good in this tool, small numbers, less good. So if I'm looking for the things that are going to have the highest of these 8 things that I can do, I'm going to ask which of these 8 things will have the greatest impact? Which of these 8 things will have the greatest benefit for my business? Starting with 8. So the one that I'm going to give number 8, I think at the moment, I haven't done the research yet, maybe it's just gut feel or whatever it is, maybe I've got some experience, maybe I've got some research behind me. I'm going to say that one of these 8 has greater impact than the other 7. Sometimes they're really close to each other. Just make a call. You can always come back and use the tool again and tweak the numbers and get something that feels a bit more right to you. But the highest impact strategy, the highest impact action will score an 8. The lowest impact action will score a 1. So if I do that in my example, I've decided that strategy number 2, a commercialization and scaling strategy, which is the big dream, to actually deliver this not just to a group of people in Comlink, but to bundle it as a product, as I've explained, so that a Comlink product that can be sold in the marketplace. I would like this thing by year 3, I think, to be delivered 40 times a year. It's not, I think, an impossible target. I think it's quite likely that that target is reachable. And if that happens, that's the magic. That becomes passive income. That becomes a proof of the value of this to Comlink as far as the whole intrapreneurship thing goes. So that scores an 8. Then I go right down, and I think the thing that actually has least impact or least benefit for me of those 8 things is legal advice on IP. And I personally put that at number 8 because I already know quite a lot about IP. You know, it's in my view, there's very little in the market like this. It's very unlikely. It hasn't been my experience in 10 years that people have pinched this stuff. Any questions about that, about making the impact assessment? Okay, now this second part, and I'm going to sort of spend a bit of time on this because this is the part that feels counterintuitive. You kind of want to say that the thing that's easiest to do scores the highest number, and that's not what you want to do. Big numbers, good. Small numbers, less good. So you want to give the biggest number to the easiest thing. That's the thing that doesn't feel intuitive, doesn't feel right. You want to reward the easiest thing. But think about it as high ease down to low ease. It's not something we say in English, but the easiest thing is going to score an 8. So again, high numbers, good. So the easiest thing is good. The easiest thing gets the biggest number. So I'm going to look at these 8 actions that I've identified, and I'm going to ask myself, of those 8 things, which is the easiest thing to do? Because that's the one that I want to value most, because I'm smart and lazy. High numbers, good. Small numbers, less good. So the easiest thing is going to score an 8, and the hardest thing is going to score a 1. Now, easy means the line of least resources. Cheapest, fastest, most fun, whatever you understand to be easy, because you're smart and lazy. So I look at the 8 things, I ask which of those 8 things is the easiest thing to do, and I give that thing an 8. So it turns out that just finding out about this course, the Australian Institute of Company Directors course, is really easy. I just got to go online and look it up, right? So no worries, it's an easy thing. That same thing, notice action number 1, commercialization and scaling this up for a bigger market is quite a big job. That's quite hard. So that gets the lowest score. Hardest thing gets the lowest, notice the note down the bottom. Easiest thing gets the highest number. Hardest thing gets the lowest number. Any questions on that? Because this is really, even when I explain it like this, I've found out in the past that people still slip into that mistake of giving the highest number to the easiest thing, to the thing that's most easy to do. It just feels natural, and you kind of forget that rave that Michael laid on you about high ease versus low ease. So now we've got a set of values. We've got 2 values, impact and ease, for each one of these actions. So if we look at action number 1, the commercialization and scaling of this product, it's going to have a huge impact, but it's really hard to do. Action number 2, develop a marketing plan, middle size impact, and still quite difficult to do, because I'm lousy at marketing. Ask anybody, I'm really bad at marketing and sales. And down we go. So by the time we get to 8, scoping that course, it doesn't have much impact, and it's really easy to do. Any questions so far? That point about the ease is really important, because if you don't get that right, the rest of it doesn't work. The tools that follow, which is about prioritization, will not work. So now I've got these 2 sets of values. I'm going to make an infographic. And this is what we'll use to decide, in this case, which of those 8 things that I can do are the most important. So those are the things I do first, or I invest most time and energy and money in, or spend most time marketing, or whatever that actually means in practice. Now, I'm going to first of all set the parameters, the edges of this tool, because I've got 8 actions. The values for ease down the bottom, right to left, from low to high, are 0, 4, and 8. If you had 16 actions, you'd type in there 0, 8, and 16. If you had 11 actions, you'd type in 0, 5.5, and 11. And the same for impact up on the left-hand side. So low impact down the bottom, 0, up to high impact, 8 on the top. So those values map directly to the 8 strategies that I've identified. Now I'm going to ask myself, back in the example I just gave you, action number 1 has an impact. I've given it an impact of out of 8 of 8, and I've given it an ease value of 1. So I go to this diagram, I think I look at this impact line. I gave this action number 1, an impact rating of 8. So I'm automatically interested. Can you see my cursor moving across the screen? Yep, seeing nods, good. I'm going to be looking across this line, the 8 at the top for impact. There's some people that just don't get this, and if you don't, just struggle, because some people don't think like this. I think like this a lot. I think like this graphically. So this isn't a trouble for me, but don't freak out. If it is for you, you'll get it. So I'm looking at 8 across the top, and what did I say for ease? 1 down the bottom. So if I look at the ease factor down the bottom, 1 would be about this point. So I'm going to look at where 8 crosses 1 on my graph. So I'm going across the 8 line to about number 1, and I'm going to put strategy number 1 right there, where my cursor is at the moment. If I go back and look at strategy number 2, action number 2, the marketing plan, the impact is 4, ease is 2. I go to this, I look at the 4 line for impact, and I look at the 2, I look at where 2 is for ease. So I'm probably going to locate strategy number 2 about there, which I do sort of. The template doesn't allow you to cross over the line, but near enough is good enough. Strategy number 3, impact 3, ease 6. I go to the tool, I look at impact 3, which is about here, ease 2, which is about here, and I put, whoops, hold on, what did I do? Impact 3, sorry, impact 3, ease 6. Disregard what I just said. Impact 3, ease 6. I go here, impact 3 is about here, ease is about here at 6, and that's where I put strategy number 3. So just check that out and tell me if it's confusing. Is there anybody troubled by this? So first of all, in the left-hand column, which is impact, you find out what the number is on the scale 0 to 8. In my case, might be 0 to 16 in yours. And ease 0 to 8 again, and then I just draw lines across the graph from each of those points, and that's where I locate just the number. Don't have to write in text or whatever, just the number. Any questions? Good. This is one of the challenges I'm finding with online delivery. I can't read your body language. Some of you are getting tense now. Some of you are quite relaxed. I can't really see that. So I'm hoping that the silence is a good sign. If I do that with all 8 of my actions, I end up with a spread like this. Now, here's a question. Here's a question. What is this teaching me? How can I identify which of these actions, 1 to 8, do you think are the important actions? The most important actions. They're all important. They wouldn't be there otherwise. But which is the most important of the 8?
6.
6? And why?
Because it's the highest on both.
Highest impact and highest ease. Yeah? Well, second highest ease.
Yeah.
So, correct. Thanks, Steph. Anybody have a different idea? Is that confusing for anybody? Okay. Generally, I'm going to be most interested in anything to the right of this middle line, the middle easy line, because I'm smart and lazy. I want to do the easiest things. Yeah. And of those things to the right-hand side of that ease line, I'm going to pay particular attention to anything that appears in that top right-hand box, that top right-hand quadrant, because those are the actions that are simultaneously high impact and high ease, which means relative to the others, easier to do and having the biggest bang for the buck. So number 5 and number 6, which in my case was get a marketing mentor. I've already said how weak I am, and take advantage of the fact that this thing called the Vitality Village is happening, and this intrapreneurship program can be sold in the first place to them, so it's pretty easy. So if I have to prioritize those 8 things, I'm going to be able to say the things that I really need to pay attention to first or invest most in are actions number 5 and 6. Now, what is most important after that is kind of your call, my call. I might say action number 3 is pretty important because while it's relatively low in impact, although not the lowest, it's easy to do. I might say it's number 1 because while it is the hardest thing to do, it has the lowest ease. Remember, high numbers good, low numbers less good. It has the most impact of all of them. So sometimes that is an action that can be broken into sub-actions, like steps to make that big action happen, which makes it more practical and viable for me to invest in. I'm going to be, one thing for sure, I'm going to be least interested in this lower left-hand box because that captures the actions that are hard and relatively low impact. So I'm going to put those right at the end. And sometimes at this stage, people actually just drop that off the list. Why am I doing action number 2, which in my case was a marketing plan? Why am I doing that at all? I put it there because I want to find a marketing mentor and I'll work out the plan with him or her because I'm lazy. Any questions about that?
No.
So what we've got so far is a process where we've scanned all the tools we've used so far and sifted them and mined them for actions. And then we've gone through a process, a 2-stage process. First of all, of breaking those down to a maximum of 16. And we've just completed a process of prioritizing those. So we've got a list of actions and we've got an understanding of which ones first, which ones are most important. Now we're going to do a categorization of the actions. We're going to ask ourselves what kind of actions they are, because this helps us with actually putting our project on the ground. Some of these actions, for example, will be financially oriented. If I want to open a cake shop, I'm going to have to invest a lot in rent, equipment, staff, and etc. Those are all financial issues. I'm going to have to pay attention to that because, as we found in the cash flow analysis, cash is king. I can have the biggest ideas in the world, but if I haven't got the money to pay for them or the resources to provide for them, they are not going to happen. That's the bottom line. That's the blood flow. Cash flow for a business is like blood flow for the body. No cash, no business, no blood, no body. It's absolutely essential. So it makes sense for me to pull out those actions which have financial consequences. And that would probably prompt me to go back to my risk analysis and look at how the financial risks involved in my business sit. So we go to this tool, number 14, setting the priorities and then naming them. So I've just, I went through, those are my 8 actions down in the left-hand side. I'm not particularly interested in priorities at this stage, but you can list them from most important, number 1, down to least important, number 8, whatever makes sense or is useful to you. What's actually useful is the kind of action bit over on the right. And you'll notice that some of those actions are financial. Action number 7 and half of action number 8 are financial. Half of action number 8 are financial issues. And if finance is an issue in particular, this is often the case with startups, I'm going to pay particular attention to those, no matter where they appeared on my fancy infographic. Now you'll notice in the second column after the action that sometimes with those actions I can break them into steps. You don't have to do that. That column can be entirely blank, but I've just put in some steps to identify, to demonstrate. So if I look at a documentation folder that I identified before, I actually have to work out, first of all, what kind of format, what platform I'm going to use so that this document can be shared. It might be something like Google Docs and Slack. I'm going to do a bit, or Slack, which is a content management system or team project management system. I'm going to look at what one suits me best, what one's cheapest, do a whole bunch of assessment, and then I'm going to share that with the people that I want to be involved in my project. So 2 steps to create that final action. One of those steps is production related, one of those is customer related. Now, you don't need to use these 4 categories. This is just what experience has told us that people find useful. You might have 4 different categories, and I'll show you in an example in a minute, somebody who's ditched these 4 categories and used categories of their own. It's what's meaningful and relevant to you, what makes sense to you. Customer related means anything to do with marketing or your relationship with your customers. You might remember from marketing that it's different from sales. Marketing is a story. Marketing is a story that puts you in the right place, that creates a relationship with your customer. So anything that has to do with access or engaging with my customers is going to get a little cross in that column. Finances, I've already raved to you about. Production means what it is, what it takes to bring my product, what it takes to bring my service to my market. What do I need to develop? Commercialization and scaling is a good example of that. That's how do I actually package the product that you're working with now so that it's clear and suitable for a wide range of customers. People and learning means myself. What do I need? Anything that helps me skill up or get better at what I do. Cook those donuts better, ice those donuts better, faster. What's fun? Anything that's about me. In this case, it's just working out what that course is. Does this course suit me? Can I afford it? Where does it get me? But it becomes finance related because I don't want to pay for it. I want Comlink to pay for it. So I'm going to have to actually, and I know already that it's going to be expensive. So what kind of case do I need to put to Comlink that it's worth investing that money in me? So therefore, it's finance related. It's also people and learning, but because there's money involved and because of the importance of money that I was just stressing, I'm going to put it in that column. Any questions about that? Okay, so we've identified a bunch of actions. Just the process of stepping through these tools, in my experience, helps us refine our ideas. As I say, sometimes people go backwards now and go right back to the now tools and tweak them. Customer product relationship. It might be becoming obvious to me at this stage that selling those donuts or that lawn mowing service to old people who live in units was just not a good idea. You know, I need people that can that have a lawn around their house that needs mowing or a garden that needs maintenance, and those people might be young families or something. So I go back to the product market tool right at the very beginning when we were creating the value proposition and look at those customers again and ask myself those first key questions. What is my product really? And who is my customer really? Now, I mentioned a minute ago about Gantt charts. This is not an Edgeware tool. You can actually go online, just Google Gantt chart after the fellow who invented it and download a template. There's any number of these things out there, and some of them get quite fancy with all sorts of bells and whistles. But the basic idea is that you can map those actions in time. Now, this is really important if you're managing a project. The discussion with Steph was about taking away the importance of thinking 3 years ahead and just thinking about her project as a pilot. So suddenly she's going from 3 years back to 4 weeks as her timeline. This is a real world. This is the same project that I used in the example of the risk analysis earlier on. So down the left-hand column, I list all of the actions, all of the things that I have to do, the key things in my project. And then across the horizontal, we've got time. So week by week, The time span of this project was from the end of 2015 into the middle of 2016, which meant school holidays in the summer was right in the middle of it. That in itself was something to pay attention to. When are my people, when is my market actually on the ground and spending money? And the summer in Australia, because we have summer and Christmas at the same time, for my kind of business, for training is just a dead space. That in turn makes me think about, oh, cash flow. I'm not going to have any money coming into the bank between Christmas and Invasion Day, you know? So what am I going to actually do over that period? And the answer is bugger all, because I'm planning for that. I'm taking a break in the middle of the project. So I've got quite a heavy commitment up the top end of the project, and then I deliver as soon as people are back after Invasion Day at the beginning of February. Again, the value of this is at a glance, I can tell myself when I'm going to be busiest. So if I look at this column, the week beginning 23rd of November, I can see that I'm doing quite a lot. If I'm looking at the Christmas New Year's break, I can see that I'm doing hardly anything. Over here, I've got what we just described, what we're going through now. We're about this stage of the course. We've finished the workshop phase and we're going into the application phase, and that ends with a launch of the new businesses. Because this is a tender, I've got to satisfy the government that I'm progressing with the project. I've also put in the little speech bubble sign for every time that I should be informing them of the progress of the course. So I put that into my diary, and I know now what my deadlines are for delivering the project. Any questions about that? You don't need to make a Gantt chart. It's really there for your information. I personally think that it's a really useful tool. That's why we made this as part. We put this into the tender application. We didn't need to do that, but it was a useful thing to do. And I know that because people told us so. Amanda's dropped out. She's gone back to bed, I hope, and she's feeling better. She had viral, what's it you get? Tonsillitis, poor thing. She lost the voice entirely. Okay, that's the final tool. Now we have done the now tools, the where tools, and the how tool. And it's time to bring all of those together in a one-page plan. And that's what we're going to look at now. You might recall one of the earliest, this is the tool that I'm talking about, one-page plan. And you'll see, well, this is one of the first slides I showed you. The now boxes are on the left-hand side. The where boxes are on the right-hand side. The how boxes are down the bottom. And right in the sentence, in the middle, is your two-sentence value proposition. That's the core of your business. Remember, the two-sentence value proposition tells us four things. First thing, what it is, what your product or service is, really. Second thing is who it's for, who your customer is, really. The third thing is what value that customer sees in that product. Third thing. Fourth thing, what makes it different, what makes it competitive, what makes it compelling and interesting. All of that is in two sentences. And if you can write a compelling value proposition, you probably have a business. Or put another way, if you can't write a compelling value proposition, then you've got to think again, because something's missing. The idea of your customer, the idea of your product, the idea of the value. So if we look at this format, those things over the left-hand side are now, results of now tools, except for the SWOT. I'll explain that in a minute. Those things over on the right are where outcomes, except for customer success, and I'll explain that in a minute, why I put it there. And right down the bottom is the how, is your action list. And we've just been through that, so that'll be front of mind for most people. And again, I've used customer, finance, production, and people and learning. If you have different categories, make a format of the tool for yourself. You don't have to fill this one in. And in the examples I'll show you, people have made their own formats. If you don't like those categories, either leave them blank or make your own category and fill it in the box provided. The whole point of this one-page plan is that it captures the outcomes of pretty much every tool that you've used before, except the finances. The finances are embedded in an Excel file. We worked on that last time when we talked about cash flow. So the Excel file is what you need to upload. So finally, for your Cert 3, you need to upload the files that say now, bracket your name, now tools, bracket your name, where, bracket your name, how, bracket your name, one-page business plan and gas groups, your name, and fifth, the Excel file, which is your finances. Now, altogether, that gives you, it's not perfect, and there are other examples. There's a so-called one-page business canvas that are out there that are more detailed. But in my experience, for this stage of a business idea, this is enough. This is enough to get started. And unlike most business plans, which run to 40 or 50 pages and are more or less current when you complete them, and consequently spend most of their life in a filing cabinet somewhere or in a folder on a hard drive somewhere, this is designed to be printed out on A3, stuck on your wall, and looked at every day. So you can ask yourself, when you have to make any and every decision related to your project, what's changing? What's the environment that's changing? How am I going to manage risk? What are the important strategies that I should be focusing on today? What are the big rocks, to go back to the time management tool, that are important for me to focus on? Any questions about this? Because I'll go on from this to show you some examples. Okay, I think that's a good sign. By good sign, I mean people are kind of getting it. This is the old format, so it's exactly the same. It's just this one looks prettier. This is the one that we used to work on, looked like this. So to populate the one-page business plan, I'm going to again revise all of the tools that I've worked on so far. So right here, as I say, at the heart of your business is your value proposition. And we have a tool for that. One of the first tools we worked on is the 2-sentence value proposition. I go back to that, I revisit it. Maybe I'm ready to edit it a little bit, play around with it a little bit, and I transcribe that into the central box. The name of your business or the project goes in the box above. Over here, we have key customers and key products. Remember, I'm smart and lazy. I don't want to identify every customer and every product that I can bring to that customer, just the 20% of the ones that are going to give me 80% of the bang for the buck. And I've got, again, I think we did this tool first, even though it's labeled number 2. We have a product market segmentation tool. This is the one where I identified possible customers, identified possible products, and I cross-reference those using the cute little icons on the right, and I came up with a key customer and a key product. That goes into my business plan. That's really, really important. If you don't know what you're doing and who you're doing it for, then you don't have a business, you don't have a project. Staying over this side, there's a typo here, and I've just talked to the designer today because I didn't pick it up. Key goals, that phrase key goals should not be there. It's over on the right. So I think she's just somehow made a typo with that, and that won't appear in future. This one is just about key changes and trends. This is really important because depending on what your business is, staff might change, government might change, funding environment might change, the global financial crisis might happen, whatever it is, your risk analysis has picked that up. You put those changes, the ones you've got to pay attention to, what's happening with my suppliers, what's happening with the growth in the demographic, the older people that I'm serving, what's happening amongst the gubby mob, whatever it is that's important for your business, you list there because you should be thinking about it all the time. Because the advantage you have as a business is to be able to respond quickly to those changes, very nimbly. Now, The SWOT analysis, you might remember this tool. We did this very recently. It's part of the how, because you actually generate actions in those 4 squares, and those actions eventually end up down here in the bottom, hence how tool. But that SWOT, that list that you made very early on, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, where are the opportunities, where are the threats, that's all now data. You know, actually, what are my strengths now? What are my weaknesses now? Where are the opportunities now? Where are the threats now? So that's why those 4 boxes, the S, W, O, and T boxes, go in this left-hand side of the business plan, because that's really part of your now, even though the point of the tool is to generate the actions, which is a how strategy. If we look at the right-hand side, customer success factors. Now, this is the tool number 3. It was one of the very first tools that we looked at, and it's a now tool. But I want to suggest to you that it goes into this where, because in your visioning of the perfect outcome, you're in a world where your customer is entirely successful. So you look at those customer success factors in this part of the tool, and you look at the tool as a whole, and put the outcomes that you want to, that are important to you, into that box in the where section of the 1-page plan. You've also generated action, if you'll remember from this tool, which goes down into the how section. So some of these tools are relevant to now and where, some of them are relevant to where and what. It sort of depends on your business and how you've used it. So if you notice down, for example, here in the right-hand corner, we've got a where tool, which is the we work on what's working tool. That generates actions, which go into the how section, but it's also talking about success and strengths and etc. So you can use data from that tool in a variety of places in this 1-page plan. Which is why it's sort of, the colors don't necessarily conform with the section of the plan I'm talking about. These, what do you call that color? Tan, the brown colored tools, the where tools, which includes where it's appropriate numbers, money, go into this where section, the key goals, and then the KPIs, the ways that you're going to measure success in the perfect world. So in the perfect world, I'm going to suggest to you is year 5. It might be year 3. It might be year 2. It might be weeks 1 to 4, depending on the timeline that you've decided to focus on. And again, we've worked through with this tool the KPIs that we're going to be looking at. What are the important things right now at this stage of my project that I need to really emphasize? And then down here in the how section, we put the outcomes of the process that we've just worked through. That listing of the tools, the sifting of them, the prioritization of them, and then the categorization of them. So remember, we ended up with a list, a to-do list. Then we ended up with a prioritized to-do list, most important to least important. And then we ended up with categories. Is it related to customers and marketing, relationship with customers? Is it related to money? Is it related to producing my product or service? Or is it related to me getting better, or the stakeholders getting better at delivering those things? Or any variation on this. So like everything else here, there's nothing submitting the 1-page plan is compulsory because it actually brings the whole course together. So to that extent, it's compulsory. But how you use this is your call. It's got to be meaningful to you, because as an intrapreneur, we're going to follow through with this, right? This is not just some academic exercise at a place called TAFE or a university. This is actually real world stuff. So no bullshit, please. Less is more. Just what's important. Remember, you're smart and lazy. You're looking for the 20% that's going to give you 80% of the value. Now, if we do that, remember, this is the format that people used to use, much less pretty than the current one, but still we've got now over here, where over here, how down the bottom, and the value proposition right in the middle. So one of the examples that'll be available to you comes from a South African guy, Headley, who was in Moreton region, and his idea was a magazine, which I think he's actually developed by now. He's actually delivering this. So the value proposition is Moreton Times, the notional name of his magazine, is an independent news magazine for non-conformists like him, who are not satisfied with editorial bias in mainstream media. They want an alternative to the Courier Mail, or what some people call the curious smell. Moreton Times is committed to journalistic integrity, telling it like it is without fear or favour. So he's identifying there what it is, who it's for, what the value, who it's for, sees in what it is. And fourth question, and the second sentence, is what makes it unique. As we discussed back in that stage, we don't have to use this phrase unlike. He's chosen to use it. He could actually just say something like Moreton Times is unique and terrific because it's such and such. But he's saying, unlike much of the mainstream media, which is driven by advertising revenue and is influenced by politics, we will educate, empower, and engage. So he's already got the makings of a bumper sticker there. Moreton Times, educate, empower, engage, which is an important element in his marketing message, for example. Over on the left, he's identified his key customer and his product. He's looking at what changes could occur that are important to him, especially in his case, political changes. He's identified where he's strong, where he's weak, where the opportunities and threats are. Over on the right, he's identified customer success. There were 2 boxes there. I can't remember why I left 2 boxes for that. What the key goals are, big rocks, remember the time management, big rocks, what the key things to achieve are. And the KPIs, he hasn't put in any money, which is one of the challenges, that we discussed. Like, what's this going to cost? What are you going to charge for these things? Is it a free? Is it a giveaway? If you're not relying on advertising, how are you going to pay for this? Is it a volunteer-driven project? He hadn't answered those. But that's okay. The point was for him to make a start. So those KPIs are the ones that he's identified are valuable. He doesn't know whether it's worth running with at all, so he hasn't actually put a lot of time into numbers. And I'd still encourage him today to actually look at that. Then he's actually categorized these to-do actions, so he's got that. Again, I would encourage him, and I did at the time, to put in some deadlines, put in some quantities. I'm going to sell this number of magazines in the first year, that sort of number. But that's how it works. And this was essentially the basis of his pitch and what eventually became his business. As I say, you'll see probably half a dozen or 8 examples in that folder that I'll share with you of people that have done this for different businesses, and they've done them to different degrees of detail and different degrees of reality and reality check. And the ones that are realist are the ones that got up eventually over time and worked over time. I showed you a few of these examples right at the start. This is the sort of stuff that people have produced. I like this one because it's so pretty. Now over the left, how on the right, actions down the bottom. He hasn't got his value proposition there. I can't remember why. His key performance targets, you'll notice that he hasn't put in dollar amounts. He's put in a growth rate. So I'm going to increase what my baseline revenue is by 20% in the first year, 30% in the second, and etc. So whatever that number is, that's the kind of growth rate he's after. There's no right or wrong in this. What's meaningful for you is what's important. And what's meaningful for your customer, which is in this case the C-suite at Comlink and the board, is important to remember. What are they going to pay attention to? What's important to them as a sell? And down the bottom, he's put in the actions that he needs to do. And those are fairly precise. This is another one I shared with you earlier on. This is the firm of architects, 2-person team. And these are the ones that actually changed the actions, the how section, to stuff that was important to them. Anything to do with clients, anything to do, again, finances. Finances is always there. I mean, Again, because cash flow is the blood flow of your idea. How are you going to pay for this? How is it going to sustain itself over time? What sort of resources does it need? Now, it might not need dollars, it might need staff hours. So it might need time off for volunteers to do it. Steph's project needs a volunteer driver, that's fine. The volunteer hairdresser, that's fine, no money involved yet. But there still needs to be fuel in that vehicle, and the vehicle needs to be available. We need to buy equipment and products for the hairdressing to be able to happen, so it means an investment up front of this amount. Money will always, or money or resources will always come into it somehow. They've talked about production and delivery. Their product is architectural design, and they've talked about what training they do. So really that's people and resources. They have put in numbers, their total turnover, not their profit, but the amount of revenue they'll actually turn over in a year. They've put staff numbers because they want to scale and they want to grow their business. I'm pleased to say that Raw Ochre is a success. They went to market at a time when the state government was building so-called super clinics in the bush, where they were co-locating doctors and chemists and health providers all in one big building, and they specialised in super clinics for the regions, and they did very well out of it. This is the other end of the scale. This is a hippie one from an alternative healthcare provider, does Reiki and crystals and all of that. No value judgment intended. Like you'll see, she actually did a card reading and a crystal reading about the future and where she is now. I don't know what any of those things mean, but it wasn't written for me. It was written for her and her business and her clients, and it's meaningful for her and for them. Each of those stones means something. Each of those cards means something. But she's still working on now, where, and how. It's still the same logic. Any questions about that? So the deliverable, what you'll finally upload to the ALA site is the one-page business plan. This is the fourth of those 5 uploads that I talked about. So you upload the now, the where, the how, this one, and the finances. Those are the 5 documents that you need to upload, and you need to do the online quiz. And I'll talk about that in a sec. Any questions? Good, I think. I'm really pleased to hear, I heard around the office, Steph was telling me about it in the wilds of North Lakes, that you guys are getting together. That's absolutely in the spirit and the practice of what this process is. It's one thing for some smarty pants, expert like me to be lecturing you. It's another thing for you to be putting it in your own words so that other people in the course can understand, because sooner or later somebody's going to approach you to mentor them through this course. I won't do this against you without you giving me permission. But a bit like Steph approaching, was it Michaela for mentoring or whatever? I'm going to recommend, and it's really common for people, if they found this useful, to want to sort of share the joy. It's really common for people further down the track, this would be next year at least, for somebody to give you a ring or send you an email and say, well, what did you do with this bloody cash flow business, or some question like that. And it's a really common, the reason we have gas groups and this kind of level of interaction is that it's really common for edgies to want to help each other out. There's something satisfying about sharing your experience of the process. So group action or group accountability, depending on how you want to use the acronym. And the second part of that 4th upload after your one-page plan, because it's just there for time reasons, really, because I'm recommending that you have at least one more gas group once you've got the one-page plan together, to get some real feedback from real people and give them some advice as well. So these are the topics that I'm suggesting that you talk about, and that's what experience has told us, have been useful? Have you talked about your own needs for skills and growth of capacity? Steph and I were discussing yesterday the idea of confidence. How do you develop confidence? How do you get over imposter syndrome? You know, where do I get off as a young woman that's only been with the company for 4 months, when all these really brilliant people are doing all this amazing stuff? I feel shitty about that. No, sorry, I shouldn't be talking about it, Steph. I hope you don't mind. But that was about her own skills and her own capacity and her own sense of herself. And fortunately, I was able to connect her with somebody who was having exactly the same problem last time. And that's not uncommon. Imposter syndrome is really common, particularly, I have to say, for women, because society tells you by nature of being a woman that somehow you're second best. And even though you know it's a lie, if you're told a lie often enough, you start thinking, oh, where the smoke is fire, and you start losing confidence. Not entirely the property of women, but it's often the case. If that topic is not relevant, just type no in that column. If it is relevant, ask yourself, well, what am I going to do about that? You know, am I going to ring somebody up and ask them how they're dealing with this sort of stuff? Am I going to read a book? Am I going to do a course? Am I going to travel to this place? Am I going to go and look at the way people do community gardens in the neighbourhood centre? What am I going to do? And there's 2 pages to it. That list of topics are things that have just come up in our experience where people talk about it. Let's just stay on that confidence thing. You notice halfway down on the left, how am I going to be kind to myself? How am I going to reward myself? How am I going to get over self-doubt and imposter syndrome? Is that important to me? It might not be, in which case you just type no in the box beside it and leave it alone. If it is important to you, spend some time thinking about actions. Remember, all of this stage of the process is about action. Your final delivery, your final deliverable is a to-do list, and that is in order of priority, and that you have costed. Action, action, action. Action precedes clarity. And there's a page at the end for just notes. Things I can do, steps I can take. Forget the signature part. That's just when it's printed and people are doing the course on paper. And that's your final, your 4th uploadable. Any question about gas groups or comments? Okay, we're almost there. We're going to finish, I bet. I promise you, we will finish early tonight because when you go to the ALA website, you'll notice that there's what we're calling an online exam. And there's 3 sections to this. The first is called legals. The second is called workplace health and safety. And the third is called resources and bootstrapping. You might remember bootstrapping is how you pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Think about R.M. Williams boots. They've got a little tag where you pull them on. Bootstrapping a business is starting from scratch, pulling up your own boots and getting on with it. Now, this is consciously designed to be, I was going to say, well, easy and useful. The curriculum requires you to satisfy me as your examiner that you know what an Australian business name is. Now, you don't need that as entrepreneurs unless you're going to spin off your own business out of what you're doing, in which case you will need to register a business name. But the curriculum requires you to know this stuff. Now, I want to show you how this might work. You can choose to do this. You might have this knowledge already, but which one did I pick? 4th from the bottom, that dot point is list 3 legal responsibilities you have as a business owner. Can anybody not see that? So what I did when I prepared these slides was just literally copy that question and paste it into Google, or in this case, DuckDuckGo. Just incidentally, DuckDuckGo is a search engine that is just as effective as Google, but does not remember any of your browsing history. So it's just a little brave statement against Google. You can do it. You can just build it in as a plugin for your web browser, and every search that you do after that is invisible to Google, which is not a bad idea. So as you can say, as with Google, I've just literally pasted that question into the search box, and it gave me these responses. The one I chose to use is not strictly speaking, because the question says what legal responsibilities you have. So I'd probably, if it was my final work, I'd probably drill down a bit deeper, but I just looked at 3 of the responses that came out of the search engine. I went with the blog one, critical responsibilities of a business owner, and there's a list. Now, some of those are legal responsibilities. Some of those are just what the writer thinks are responsibilities for a business owner. And he makes available to you a downloadable ebook for nothing if you give him your email address and company name as well. But let's say, just for the sake of demonstration, that those are all legal responsibilities. They answer that question. I can just go to this section of this web page, copy and paste it into the answer box underneath that question. It can be, depending on your business, as straightforward as that. Now, having said that, you might have a business like we came up with the idea of a soup kitchen, a good quality free feed for people who need it, that will run out of the Vitality Village in the last delivery. Now, anything that involves food has a swarm of government regulations around it, with good reason. They're workplace health safety regulations. For that person, for that edgy, those workplace health and safety things were really important. For Paul, it might be cultural protocols and appropriate behaviours. For Steph, it might be management of volunteers. Comlink requires volunteers to go through an induction process so that they can be covered by the company's insurance. It'll be different for different people. Mel, you'll have a mass of particular legalities that you'll have to pay attention to as well. Some of them are local government, some of them are state government and national. The important thing here is to be realistic and answer as appropriate. Now, you might find that environmental issues, for example, the second dot point, are not actually relevant to your business. It's entirely okay for you to just type NA for not applicable or irrelevant or whatever, you know, irrelevant at this stage or something into that box. It's not about marks out of 10. It's about, again, as I said, about evidence that you've thought about this stuff. Resources and bootstrapping is probably a case in point. You're entrepreneurs, you're selling to Comlink. If Comlink buys your idea, they're going to bootstrap it. You're not, although you're going to be part of it. That comes with the turf. If you want to be part of the project, then you essentially become project manager within Comlink. Michaela today in a meeting said, well, look, my project is this sort of Zest for Life community garden. I'm not a gardener. I don't know about horticulture. I don't know about, you know, this, that, and that. And I said, well, and she said, why would you put me in that position? Why would you include me in the planning and delivery of that project? And my answer to her was, because you are one of ours. You're not some smarty pants outsider that's come in on this. You belong to Comlink, and your interest is in making Comlink happen. Of course, you become the go-to person for that project. You know? So don't feel, again, imposter syndrome, don't feel that you're not up to the job. The whole idea of the entrepreneurship thing at Comlink is that we're growing smarts in-house. And if you don't have that particular, I mean, in that particular case, Michaela decided that she would do some research and then pitch a training program to the company. So probably in horticultural, there's a Cert 3 in horticulture that you can do. You can do it online, whatever whatever suits. So she's going to come back to the company and say, I would like X dollars to be able to do this online course so I can help deliver that project better. So that's what you'd put in a bootstrapping or whatever. Just answer the questions that are relevant, or copy, search, paste. So the second last one in workplace health and safety, describe two ways you can implement workplace health safety procedures. If you just copy, paste, search, you'll actually end up with a list. Write two of them in. I don't mean to sound cavalier about that, like it doesn't matter. It just matters to different degrees, to different people at different times. But that is a requirement for your Cert 3. You need to finish these online exams, so-called. And I've given you some deadlines right up front. So this is what I see in the end. So this is for me my window when I open up the ALA site as a trainer. I've got a list of all of you as students, and in the details column, I've got a list of the things that you have submitted. The system tells me that automatically, and when I click the little right arrow over on the right, it opens up with what you've uploaded. I then have a form, an online form that I fill in to give you feedback. It's not right or wrong. You have passed, as I say. If you've uploaded and you've satisfied me that you've thought about this stuff, you have passed. It's not an issue of marks out of 10, but I take some time reading these things carefully because my reputation relies on you being bloody excellent as well. And I try to give you feedback that is useful and relevant, because eventually you will be pitching this, and you'll be pitching it in a real world environment with a view to making it actually happen. Not an academic exercise, not a mark out of 10, a real world project that you plan to actually put on the table, well, in the marketplace, in practice, Vitality Village, whatever Commonwealth's doing, roving, mobile service, etc. Okay. Therein lies endeth the lesson, children. We're now at a point where we've worked through now tools, where tools, how tools, all built around a central value proposition. It's about revising all of that now and going back and, so I'm just reading what Amanda left. Oh, and Steph responded. Thank you everyone for another interesting evening. Sorry I'm heading off early, but I wish you all the best with the tools, and we'll be excited to see your progress in a month, which is when webinar 6 number happens. Before we check out, I just want to say that I am available and I will make the time to meet with you, talk to you, respond to you. Paul sent me a Dropbox link with all of his drafts for me to give him some feedback on, which is on my to-do list, Paul. I don't know if I'll do it tomorrow. Sorry, your microphone's off.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd probably just be keen to probably have a bit of a face-to-face with you in the next week or so, if that's okay.
Yep.
It might be easiest. Yep.
Send me an email. I'm only literally in the office
Yep.
2 days a week, so I've just got to juggle my time.
Okay, I'll send you an email and see what I can arrange with you. That'd be great. Thank you. Same
offer for everybody. Give me a call. I think Steph found the conversation we had on the phone yesterday useful. Again, I have a vested interest in your success. Your success is my success in this. So I'm really interested in helping you make the best possible effort that it's possible for you to make. And sometimes that'll mean challenging you a little bit to extend yourself, stretch yourself in this. Okay. So we'll check out. I'll save the last word as usual for myself. Somebody like to go first?
I'll start.
Okay.
Hi. So I was going to mention earlier as well that after the last one that I missed, I spoke with Temi and asked her what you guys thought about our most recent idea of, funding the Daffodil project from the Respite Centre, and she